Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. Now, I agree with that. And let me give you my definition of influence. The definition of influence is simply the ability to move a person or persons to a desired action, usually within the context of a specific goal. Now, that's the definition, but I don't believe that that's the essence of leadership. The essence of influence is pull as opposed to push. As in the old question, how far can you push? Which is why great influencers, great leaders, they don't push. They don't push themselves on others. They don't push their ideas on others. They don't push their will on others. They're not pushy. Push is sort of like depending upon compliance. That's positional leadership. You know, you're the boss and you can tell them what to do. That's compliance. That's push. When people are pushed, they may do what they're told because they don't want to be fired or punished or, what have you, but they're not going to bring their best self to the table. Pull is earning commitment. So how do you do that? Well, how does a leader influence through pull rather than push? Well, the great leader, the great influencer, they ask themselves questions to make sure they're focused in the right direction. See, I believe we need to be internally motivated, but outwardly focused.
For over 30 years, Bob Burg has been successfully showing entrepreneurs, leaders, and sales professionals how to communicate their value and accelerate their referral business. Although for years, he was best known for his sales classic, Endless Referrals. It's his business parable, The Go-Giver, co-authored with John David Mann, that has created a worldwide movement. While part of a 4-book series, The Go-Giver itself has sold more than 1 million copies and been translated into 30 languages, ladies and gentlemen. It was rated number 10 in Inc. magazine's list of the most motivational books ever written. Let me repeat that. This magazine was rated number 10 in Inc. magazine, if you guys know about that. Inc. magazine's list of the most motivational books ever written, and was Hotspot's 20 most highly rated sales books of all time. Bob is an advocate, supporter, and defender of the free enterprise system, believing that the amount of money one makes is directly proportional to how many people they serve. He is also an unapologetic animal fanatic and served on the board of directors for Furry Friends Adoption and Clinic in his town of Jupiter, Florida. For more information, go to thegogiver.com. That's spelled TheGoGivr.com. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you, sir. What a joy. What a nice introduction. What a pleasure to be with you. And, you had mentioned about the word value. You are absolutely a person who's value-centered, values-based. I just, just getting to know you on social media has been a joy.
Thank you. I'm getting to know you too. And you prove that book. Ladies and gentlemen, grab that book. I'm telling you, it makes sense. The story, you just gravitate. But what I'm going to do, you go by Mr. Berg or Bob. What's comfortable for you, sir?
Bob,
I'm old school. I have to ask.
I appreciate that. No, Bob is absolutely fine. Thank you.
Okay, great. Bob, I'm going to go through a few questions on here. I'm just going to jump to the top about our show. My show deal with 3 things, and it's going to tie to you because you're a leadership and you do public speaking also, right? You spoke worldwide. So we talk about motivation, teaching, and perspective on leadership and personal development. So anyone, it doesn't have to deal with business, just deal with person's life. Would you agree, sir? Especially for their book.
Absolutely. Sure.
Okay. So this is going to tie in, ladies and gentlemen. That's why if you listen to the podcast, I want you to see this works for if you have a business or if you work for someone or if you lead, it doesn't matter. This book is for everyone. I promise you. So I'm going to ask you a few questions, and I just want to start out. It's going to lead to this. What got you? What started you? Was you always a business owner? or we'll just go back a little bit. We want to find out about Mr. Bob.
Well, I began in broadcasting, first in radio doing sports, and then I
Okay.
was a news guy for a couple of years. On television on a very very small ABC affiliate. I wasn't really very good at it, and I like to say I graduated into sales, and
Really?
because there was really nothing else I thought I could do, and I found sales was certainly not very easy because I had no sales experience, no formal sales training, and the company where I was working, that's not something that they provided, and so I was sort of out there on my own, and
Okay.
didn't do very well for a while, and then I was in a bookstore. Now, this is about 40 years ago. So back then,
Okay.
sales books weren't everywhere. You see them all the
Sure.
time now.
Right.
It's not, but
Right.
back then it was different. And I was looking for something. I didn't exactly know what. And I saw two books. One was by Zig Ziglar, and the other was by Tom Hopkins, two of the really iconic
Yes.
salespeople, sales trainers, right?
Right.
And so I got those books, and it just opened up a whole new world for me. First, I had no idea there was a how-to aspect of selling. I didn't know.
Okay.
I mean, can
Okay.
you imagine that? But I
Right.
had no idea.
Right.
And so that inspired me right there. So I got into those books, and I always say I didn't read them. I devoured them. And so
Okay.
I would come
Okay.
home every night after work, and I would just go through them, and I would note take, I would highlight, I would underline, I would tear, the turn on the pages, mark the pages. I mean, it was just, and I studied and I learned. And interesting, within about 3 weeks, my sales began to really, really improve.
Okay.
The reason, my feeling is, because I certainly wasn't a different person 3 weeks earlier than I was 3 weeks later. It's that I was now working with a methodology, a
Okay.
system.
That's right.
I,
Right.
I personally define, and I'm always defining terms. So,
Sure.
I define a system as the process of predictably achieving a goal based on
Right.
a logical and specific set of how-to principles. The key being predictability. If it's been proven that by doing A, you can get B, then you know that all you need to do is A and continue to do A, and eventually you'll get the desired result of B. And that's what I did. But here was the really great thing, and I know you'll appreciate this. It's that I started realizing that sales wasn't just about understanding the how-to aspect, although that, of course, is very important, but it's the personal development aspect.
That's
It's
right.
building
Right.
yourself on the inside, and then that success on the inside that you're building, you're taking in through books, through, well, back then it was tapes, right?
Right.
Going to seminars, doing all those things, right? Then the success manifests itself outwardly, but it begins in here. So I had started collecting all the books I could, all the sales and motivational and personal development and
Right.
classics, and studying them. And that's really what it was about. And eventually I became sales manager of another company, and started after that being asked to share with other companies and other individuals what worked for me. And I eventually found out, wow, you can actually make a living doing that. You can be a speaking professional, and
Right.
I joined the National Speakers Association, learned how to have a speaking business, not just the speaking part, but the business aspect of it.
Oh,
And,
okay.
have been doing that now for, about 30 years.
Now, did you when you started, you said sports and radio, right? What
Mhm.
type of field, what type of position was it sales that you went to? And I'm going to
So I
lead to something, ladies and gentlemen. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, so I started actually selling advertising for radio and TV. The company I had worked for had a spot open in their advertising department,
Okay.
and they actually had a TV station and a radio station. That's not the radio station where I had worked before, but
Sure.
this particular ABC affiliate also had a radio station too. So I started selling advertising for both their
Okay.
radio and TV.
Okay. So you had to adjust because you had to be a people person. I'm thinking, 'cause I used to do door to door. And you can just imagine you just walk into the business, hey, we're not interested. You got to
Yeah,
have a mindset at that
sure.
time to keep going. So how did you adjust? Because what I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen, in the book, it's about giving value. You had to give some value, but sound
Sure.
like in time he had to research and study where you headed, right? Or what
Well,
you doing.
sure. Yeah, and like anything else, I mean, you've got to be able to reach out and to be able to find out who is interested, in knowing about how you can help them through your product or service. And I think that's the big thing. I
Sure.
think it's understanding that selling is, some people think, well, selling is trying to convince someone to buy something they don't want or need. Well, that's not selling. That's called being a con artist. Okay.
Right. Okay. Okay.
Selling,
Okay.
I define selling as simply discovering what the other person does want, does need, does desire, and
Okay.
helping them to get it.
Gotcha.
But there's still work that goes into finding out if that person is a prospective customer or not. They may not be. So you've got to be able to knock on enough doors or make enough calls or what have you to be
Right.
able to do that. Now, when you as an entrepreneur, you'll determine your niche before you go out after it. So you're going to have a good idea if this niche is one that, do they need what you offer? Do they want what you offer? Because if they need it but don't want it, well, that might not be too successful too. And can they afford what you offer? And so, but if they need it, they want it, can afford it,
Right.
and it's a market that you believe you would enjoy serving, okay, now you've got a good market to go to. And that doesn't mean everybody in that niche is going to be interested. They're not.
Right. Right.
But at least that is a niche itself, that some of the people will be, but you've got to be willing to go out and make the calls and get no's, along the
But you
way.
had the mindset because you're positive. That's what my point is. You're positive, and you sound like you. Well, I know you did. I'm just saying. Overall, you had a vision, and if it doesn't happen, you still moved on to the next. And that's part of the book. Also, you am I right?
But I didn't always have that, though.
That's
That's
what.
something I had to develop.
But were you passionate about your position? Sound like you're
Yeah. Oh,
passionate. You're
I
a
loved what
passionate
I was
person.
doing. Oh, I
It
loved what I was doing.
wasn't forced on you, right?
Right. No, I loved what I was doing. I loved the
Right.
opportunity, but I
Right.
wasn't necessarily back, at that age when I was doing it.
Okay.
I'm not the positive person that I necessarily am right now. I went through a real big,
Okay.
metamorphosis in my 30s, because I
Okay.
realized that, while by the time I had reached my, mid 30s, I had a certain modicum of success. I also knew there were a lot of things about me, a lot of character flaws that were keeping me from being as successful and happy. And when you think about it, that is what it's about. If
Sure.
you want to have a happy, fulfilled life, want to,
Right.
you know, uh, but there were a lot of aspects of me that I didn't feel that was going to happen based on how I was. And so I really went through some changes, and became and really turned myself into a person who was a lot more positive, who was a lot more grateful for things,
That's
right?
awesome.
Who spoke better of people than I had previously. So my sales when I was younger, and again, I was very fortunate. I learned sales, did well in it. I was developing myself to a point I could attain some success, but certainly I had to make some significant changes in myself
Okay.
before I could take that to the next level.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, that's another episode. Yeah, but that's I can see it. That's how because we could go deeper, but we're not. This is temporary. Let's stay focused. It's on the
Okay.
leadership. So what what tell us about the book, and then it's gonna lead to I'm gonna ask that question, the next question. What overall the book, just a short version of the book
Yeah, sure. So the book itself is, my apologies. The
Sure, no
book
problem.
itself is a parable. So it's a business fable. And it was co-authored by John David Mann, who's a wonderful, wonderful writer. I'm
We
much
think
more of a,
him. We think
yeah,
him too. Shout
yeah, I
outs.
know.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm much more of a how-to guy. I'm step one,
me
step
too.
two, step three.
Yeah.
I'm actually fairly boring. John is a magnificent writer, and
Okay.
so we collaborated on this. And it's a business parable about a young guy by the name of Joe. He's a good guy, and he's ambitious and he's aggressive and he's out there and he's on. But his focus is really, it's too much on himself and
Okay.
not on
Wow.
others. And what
Mm.
that's really doing is that's stifling his growth and his effectiveness. And he meets a mentor, a main mentor by the name of Pindar, who then introduces him to some others. Here's what Joe realizes, and here is the basic premise of everything Go Giver. And that is
Okay.
when you shifting your focus. This is really, where it begins, shifting your focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others, understanding that doing so is not only a more fulfilling way of conducting business, it's the most financially profitable way as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So that leads to this question. What is leadership to you?
Well, I remember Dr. John Maxwell, one of the iconic leadership authorities
Yes.
of our time, saying that he defined leadership as influence. He said
Okay.
leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. Now, I agree with that, and let me give you my definition of influence.
Okay.
Okay, and then the definition, but then I want to go a little deeper, if that's okay.
Please.
Okay. So I believe that the definition of influence is simply the ability to move a person or persons to a desired action, usually within the context of a specific goal. Okay.
Okay.
That's by definition, influence, leadership, influence, right? Now, that's the definition, but I don't believe that that's the essence
Okay.
of leadership or the essence of influence.
Okay.
The essence of influence is pull as opposed to push.
Okay.
As in the old question, how far can you push a rope? And we know the answer is not very far, well, at least not very fast or very effectively, right? Which is
Right.
why great influencers, great leaders, they don't push. They don't push themselves on others. They don't push their ideas on others. They don't push their will on others. They're not pushy.
Right.
You never hear people say, wow, that David or that Mary, she is so influential. She has a lot of push with
Right.
people, right? No,
Right.
she's influential. She's a great leader. She has a lot of pull
Cool.
with
Right.
people.
Magnetize.
It's an
Right.
attraction, right?
That's
They
right. That's right.
magnetize
Right. That's what
people to
attracted me to
themselves,
you,
right?
sir.
And so, that push is sort of like depending upon compliance. That's positional leadership. You're the boss and you can tell them what to do. That's compliance. That's push. Now, does that ever work? Well, for the short term, you might get something done, but it's very difficult because whether you're talking about a team of thousands or 100 or a committee of 3 or whatever it happens to be, when people are pushed, okay, they may do what they're told to because they don't want to be fired or punished or what have you, but they're not going to bring their best self to the table.
Right.
And they may
Right.
even sabotage the process,
Right.
when it comes to that's push. Pull is earning commitment. Okay. So how do you do that? Well, how does a leader influence through pull rather than push? Well, the great leader, the great influencer, they ask themselves questions to make sure they're focused in the right direction. See, I believe we need to be internally motivated, but
Okay.
outwardly focused. So the great influencer, what John David Mann and I would call the genuine influencer, they ask themselves questions such as, how does what I'm asking this person to do, how does it align with their goals?
Okay.
Right? How does it align with what they need, what they want, what they desire? How does what I want this other person to do, how does it align with their values? How does it help them solve a problem or a challenge? How does it help bring them closer to happiness? Right?
Win-win.
Win-win. Exactly. And when we ask ourselves these questions thoughtfully, intelligently, genuinely, authentically, right? Not as a way to manipulate another human being into doing our will, but as a way of building everyone, like you said, win-win, building everyone in the process. Now we've come a lot closer to earning that person's commitment. Okay. Now, Dondi Scumaci, one of my great friends, wonderful leader, she has a saying when it comes to leadership, when it comes to influence, she says, compliance will never take you where commitment can go. And I think that's just such a beautiful, summation, really.
Can you repeat that? Compliance will,
yeah.
to
She
the
says,
listeners?
yeah, compliance will never take you where commitment can go.
Awesome.
So as leaders, our job is to help people buy into our vision, if you will, right? Because the leader begins with that vision, and we help them buy into it through helping them identify where they relate to that
Right.
vision, right? How they
Right.
fit in with that vision, how that vision benefits them as well.
Wow. So that leads to this. That leads to the next question. So you've been doing it over 40 years, which you've been a leader, but you've been in the sales field or whatever. How has leadership changed to you? What's your perspective on leadership? Because reason why I say that, if ladies and gentlemen, if you look at my previous podcast, I listen to leaders such as everyone has a different technique. And this time around, you got the key word culture. It's not like the old days where, as he said before, it's kind of like pushy. You got pushy salesman.
Right.
I'm not a pushy salesman. I love educating, and people do business they like, know, and trust. So what is your perspective now on leadership at that time? Is it the same or has it changed?
Well, when I was first starting out, I wasn't a very good leader. I was a good salesperson, but when I first got moved to sales manager,
Okay.
which is sales leadership, right?
Right.
I wasn't a good leader. I had no idea. Just like when I got into sales, I had no idea how to sell, right? Well, when I got put into leadership, because I was a good, productive salesperson, I got put into leadership. I didn't know anything about leadership. I was a horrible leader.
Okay.
I was a good producer, but I wasn't a good leader. It's two different things.
Okay.
And so I had to learn. And I didn't even realize I was a bad leader. Right. I didn't know what I didn't know. And so it was only
me,
when
me,
I,
me. He was me.
yeah, well, it was really. And
You're right.
when I began to realize that I was really a kind of a yucky leader,
Sure. Right.
well, what do you do when you realize something? Just like when I realized I had no idea how to sell, you find out how to do it. How did I do? My way was always find some books, right?
Right.
And so I started reading, and I started listening, and right. And so you learn as you go along, and you look at people, and then you think back to people you've worked for and who've led you. And there are all kinds of examples. And I remember Jim Rohn, there's a saying
Yes.
from the sages that who is a wise person? And the answer is that person who learns from all others. And I always
Mm.
love that saying. I think Jim Rohn had a great
Love
take
that.
on that saying, though. If you remember Jim Rohn, he was one of those
Yes, I'm
great
familiar
one.
with Jim.
Oh, was he
Yes,
wonderful?
brilliant.
And yeah, and Jim used to say, yeah, you can learn from everyone. From some people, you learn what to do, and from other people, you learn
That's
what
right.
not to do.
Right. Exactly.
And I thought of leaders that I'd worked for, and some were really good, and some were really horrible.
Sure.
And so you kind of also take that into consideration. And you say, what are the things they did that I admired, that made me feel included, that made me feel comfortable, that made me feel like I wanted to follow them into battle?
That's right.
Right.
Right. Exactly.
And then what did the leaders do who kind of made me feel awful and just, it was a horrible situation, horrible culture, and so forth. Well, don't do those, don't do that stuff. Right. So there we can learn from, from our personal experiences, from those we've experienced. And of course, there's always, books and audios and videos and all the learning that we can do, and, and so forth. So to me, it's a fun journey.
Okay. Well, hey, Bob, I know we could go further, but I'm not going to go further because we get deep in conversation.
I could talk to you all day.
I can too, man, because you're wisdom, man, and you're a real person. And I'm pretty sure the audience, here's the key, ladies and gentlemen, send us a review. Make sure on YouTube, podcast, or my LinkedIn, reach out to Bob, reach out to me, send us questions. Because I want another series, if you don't mind. I'd love to have you on
I'd
again.
love that.
So what you got? What do you have going on? What do you got going on? Give them a plug, or what would you like
Probably our most fun thing, and people can find out most everything at Burg, BURG.com. And I think you also mentioned, you were kind enough to mention the GoGiver.com earlier. Sure. We also have a Go-Giver community. And
really?
Yeah. And it's just at thegogivercommunity.com. And it's for people who want, I always say, think of Facebook, and then, well, it's nothing like Facebook. Where a whole group of people kind of get together and they give value to others, and they also are able to receive value from others. And it's a community of people who want to make a difference, who want to kind of create the world that we all want to co-create together.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun. So, we do what we call Go-Giver networking, and there's a lot of a lot of strategizing, and a lot of it's really fun. So we invite anybody to check out the community, and if they'd like to join up, then they can do. There's a couple options there for them to do.
That was going to be the question. Was it for businesses or for people that want to learn how to network with like-minded, or what type of?
I mean, it's for both, and there are a couple of different memberships. There's the Go Giver community, the ambassador level, which is $11 a month. We wanted to make it affordable for everyone to be able.
Hold up, ladies and gentlemen, stop the press. He said $11.
Yeah, $11 a month,
really,
and it's guaranteed. We always say do it for a month. If you don't like it, you can stop. You'll get your money back. And then we have also a Go Giver Success Alliance part of that, and that's a little more expensive. That's $97 a month, and that also includes a group meeting where we do some really deep, intensive strategizing. But I just say to people, start out with the 11. You can always, if you want, you can always move up to the Go Giver Success Alliance.
Oh, that's very affordable, ladies and gentlemen. That's less than a meal. Pretty much, it is less than a meal these days. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, hey, Bob, I definitely appreciate it. We're honored to have you, man. Feel free to come back to this show anytime, and anything you need from me, as you know, just reach out to me.
Thank you.
I'm all. And once again, shout out to Hendra, to Tam Boonen. I wouldn't have met this person here, this human being, without you, because he followed your book. Hendra followed your advice on your book.
That was really nice. I appreciate it.
It works. So thanks for coming on the show, Bob. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. As I always say, end it. Don't condemn, don't complain, because you have a choice to make a change. Have a great day.